Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing, but at night they feel so strange, with long halls, flickering lights, and that feeling that crawls on you, that makes you feel like you are not alone. It was an old hospital, tucked away on the forgotten edge of town, a massive, crumbling building that felt more like a relic than a place of healing. The bricks were cracked and weathered by time, the windows fogged with permanent grime, and every hallway seemed to lean under the weight of years it could no longer carry. It had been patched up 100 times, new walls, ceilings and coats of paint, but the rot was too deep to fix. No matter how many times they tried to hide it, the place still looked like it was barely holding on by a thread, or maybe something darker was holding it together. I was hired to do security, which was a simple job for me. All I had to do was patrol the halls, check the cameras, and ensure no one wandered into restricted areas. Easy money, I thought. Quiet nights, no problem, no disturbance. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what it was. It was mind-numbingly boring. I spent my shifts pacing endless sterile corridors lit by flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed and hissed overhead like angry insects. The hospital always smelled the same. It smelled like strong bleach that hurt your nose, old metal pipes, and something sour you couldn't name. The only sounds were the beeping of heart machines far away, the creaking of the old building, and sometimes a patient coughing in the night. It almost lulled me into a false sense of security. But then, things started happening. Things I've never experienced before. One night around 3 a.m., a time people say ghosts can easily cross into our world, I was doing my usual rounds on the 4th floor. The 4th floor was supposed to be quiet, mostly filled with long-term care patients, the kind who barely spoke, they barely moved, and barely seemed aware of the world around them, their lives suspended somewhere between waking and whatever came next. While the other rooms sat abandoned in heavy darkness, their doors cracked open just enough to reveal a sliver of blackness beyond, like yawning mouths waiting patiently to swallow anyone foolish enough to wander too close. As I passed room 417, I heard it. Laughter. It was soft, childlike, light and airy. A bubbling giggle drifted from beyond the closed door like smoke. I froze mid-step, a jolt of cold panic shooting through me. There were no children on that floor, there hadn't been for years, and visiting hours ended strictly at 8 p.m, so no exceptions. I stood there, rooted in place, my heart hammering against my ribs as I strained to listen. The laughter continued, a teasing, playful sound, but it seemed to move, dancing from corner to corner inside the room like something unseen was running wild. Finally, swallowing the knot of dread building in my throat, I forced myself to grab the handle and push the door open. But to my surprise, the room was empty. The bed was neatly made, corners tucked tight by the night staff. No patients, no visitors, no toys, nothing but the faint buzzing hum of fluorescent lights and the sickly glow of the hallway spilling across the floor. I stood there for a moment, longer than I should have, scanning every shadow, waiting for something, anything to move, but nothing did. I pulled the door shut quickly and moved on, forcing myself to believe it had been nothing more than the old building playing tricks on my exhausted mind. But a few nights later, it got worse. I was sitting in the security office, sipping lukewarm coffee and mindlessly watching the monitors, when something caught my eye on camera 7, the West Wing hallway. A figure was just standing there. At first, I thought it might be a patient, someone confused, disoriented, and wandering out of their room, which wasn't uncommon in places like this, where the nights stretched long and the line between dreams and reality often blurred. But when I leaned closer to the screen, the blood drained from my face. The figure wasn't moving, not an inch. It stood inches away from the wall, head bowed slightly forward, hands limp by its sides, as if it were whispering to the concrete itself. It didn't sway or breathe, which was wrong. A cold, crawling dread slithered up my spine. Without thinking, I grabbed my flashlight and bolted from the office, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud against the empty tiled floors. When I reached the west wing, the hallway was deserted, but the air was wrong. It was thick and oppressive, humming with a static charge like the moments before a lightning strike. Each breath felt heavier than the last, as if the building itself was holding its breath. And there, on the wall, exactly where the figure had been standing, was a smear. Dark, greasy, something in between an oily handprint and a stain left by something not quite human. Against every better instinct, I reached out and touched it. It was ice cold. Not just cold from the night air, but unnaturally cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones and lingers. The kind of cold that makes you feel like you're touching something from the other side. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that something had been there or the fact that it had wanted me to find it. After that night, everything changed. The hospital didn't feel old anymore. It felt alive. The lights flickered constantly now, buzzing angrily like swarms of invisible insects whenever I walked beneath them. Sometimes they would dim just as I approached, plunging the hallway into a flickering half-darkness that made every shadow seem to twist and crawl across the walls. It felt deliberate, as if something unseen was reacting to my presence. The elevators were worse. They groaned loudly in the dead silence of the night, their rusty cables creaking as the doors slid open on their own, revealing nothing but darkness inside. And sometimes they would open and stay that way, the empty elevator yawning like a waiting mouth, as if inviting me to step inside. Sometimes, as I made my rounds through the deserted corridors, I would hear my name drift through the intercom system, soft, sickly sweet, and utterly wrong. A voice that didn't belong to anyone I knew, a voice that sounded far too close, even though the speaker system was supposed to be completely shut down after hours. Every time I heard it, a cold weight would settle in my chest, which felt a little closer than before. I tried to brush it off, tried to tell myself it was nothing but stress, or maybe even the guilt of working in a place most people never leave alive. But then the patients started talking too. Whispers filled the hallways. Some spoke of a man in the walls, a tall, twisted figure who watched from the cracks, while others spoke of a woman with black eyes who appeared at the foot of their beds, watching them with hollow, endless hunger. I wanted to believe it was just medication-induced hallucinations. I needed to believe that. Until one night, as I passed a patient's room, an old woman grabbed my arm with a desperation so fierce it stunned me. Her eyes were wide, bloodshot, filled with pure terror. They locked onto mine. "Don't let them in," she rasped. "Once you see them, they see you too." I forced a nervous laugh, tried to brush off the icy shiver crawling down my spine, and wanted to pretend it was just fear, nothing more, but deep down I knew better. Later that night, as I reviewed the security tapes, I saw something that stole the breath from my lungs. On the monitor at the far end of the dark, flickering hallway stood a tall, thin, and motionless figure, its silhouette barely visible in the broken, stuttering light. But I stared, frozen, watching frame by frame as the figure remained still, until slowly, unnervingly, it turned its head, not toward the hallway or camera, but directly toward me, as if it knew I was watching, as if it could see me. Ever since then, I haven't worked night shifts anymore, not in hospitals or anywhere. Because once you've seen what walks through those halls when the world sleeps, you realize hospitals don't just heal the living. They house the forgotten, the restless, and the things that should not be seen. If you want to hear what happened after I quit, make sure to subscribe to Insidious Inc., comment about your experience if you had one, hit that like button, and turn on notifications, because trust me, the story isn't over.